Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Comic Book Reviews. Today, I will be reviewing three books: Green Arrow number 44, Cover issue number 1, and Paper Girls number 24. Um, of course, we got this month's DC Nation, which has some very interesting things. It's got an article that I really didn't like, which was the one is being used to promote the Hero in Crisis miniseries, which and which got has me a bit worried about what this is planning going forward, um, and um, and and I think a lot of people are actually kind of worried about this whole hero in crisis thing. Uh, doesn't sound that good. And the article that I'm talking about, the whole psychoanalysis of the main heroes for the series, which I can't find. Definitely feels this article right here, and this article right here. Feels like it kind of diminishes heroism and basically just puts it down as people with mental illness. That's what drives them, and not the selflessness of pure heroism, which is not good either for the characters and for us readers, and the way they're trying to sort of promote that whole heroes go to sanctuary because they've suffered some sort of trauma throughout their superheroic career. And I don't know, it just seems kind of counterproductive in my opinion. We could discuss this whole article extensively, and that'd be like a whole another video, and I really don't want to get my foot in my mouth and say something that is incorrect, because I know what I know, but I don't know everything, and I don't have any expertise on that. Anyways, let's get on to the comic book review. So, Green Arrow number 44. So, in issue 43, we meet the Citizen, who is this sort of online social justice warrior who is going after the 1%ers. And the last issue ended with naming Oliver Queen as one of his next victims. So the issue starts basically with people chasing Oliver Queen all over the city, trying to catch him, trying to do the beating for a Citizen. Of course, some people actually feel bad for what happened to Mr. Jubal Slade. They got him killed. Some people thought, great, he deserved it. Some, felt like it was just a joke, and now they feel like complicit of committing murder. So we learn the reason why Oliver Queen is targeted, among along with two other people, which you know Green Arrow is able to save. But why is Oliver Queen a target? Well, it seems that years ago, way before when he was young, he got into an accident with some of his friends and accidentally killed a woman. He was drunk. He didn't really know what the hell was going on, and it seems his father paid a corrupt cop off to make it a hit and run and have no real culprit. So yeah, that's true. That was something that happened a long time ago. He wasn't even aware of it because of his state. Uh, but so that's why. So yes, he's able to save the woman because her crime was sort of feeding her horses, race horses, with performance enhancing drugs. You know, so that she could basically cheat the system and always win on her horses. When she went and betted on the races, she pretty much cheated the system and always won. So that was, you know, her crime, and of course that's terrible. And not that she deserves death, and she was gonna get a pretty gruesome one though. If we weren't for Green Arrow showing up, which you know, pretty much Citizen had her, tied up to several horses, uh, 3 horses, and of course carrying them would make the horses run, and she'd probably be dismembered to death. So he was able to save her. Black Canary was going after the other person, who I think was a Wall Street guy. I want to see. Um, who was it? Sorry. Um, mm, 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 mm. Some I think. Right, a guy who was a investment banker who pretty much funded people like Jubal Slade. So that was his crime. Black Canary went over to protect him, which apparently he wasn't targeted because he actually did have some sort of security system set up. So he went, got redoubled security, and but yeah, Green Arrow saved her from a gruesome death. And so the issue ends with Superman showing up at the end. So yes, something that happened a long time ago, something he wasn't even aware that it happened. He knew he hit something. He didn't know who it was, and I'm pretty sure he would have done something to help the parents of this girl that he killed. Being drunk and being the jerk that he was back in his youth. Um, so so yeah, I'm really liking this arc. I'm actually now finally enjoying the art more. I had a bit of a problem before in the previous issue, but for real minor details. But the art's gotten a little bit better here. So yeah, great story. Cover number 1. So this is the other new launch from Brian Michael Bendis' Jinx World line of creator-owned books. He actually has released 2 others which are like continuations from previous stories. So it's like the first new one with a new character. So basically, the story's comic artist is recruited by the CIA for something, because we don't really see if he's got a specific mission. So basically, the story, is about this artist by the name of what's his name, Max something, Max Field. So Max is in a convention approached by this woman, who is called Julia, and so they have a conversation. She buys a ton of art from him, about $2,000 worth of art. Uh, and so she keeps showing up at, so she keeps sort of showing up where he is. She shows up at a convention in London as well. And so Max is like, what's her deal? Is she flirting with me? Something, because she just comes very forward towards him. Seems to definitely be a little bit flirty as well. And most of the issues we also see his everyday life, working on his comic. There's some problems with his father that he helps him out, his dad. Uh, and when when she meets Max in London, Julia freely tells him that she works for the CIA. She works at Langley as an analyst, but now she's sort of recruiting. She leaves in the middle of dinner. Max is still like, what the hell is going on here? I just don't get it. Then he receives an invitation to go to Istanbul, which he takes, and again, Julia sort of shows up again at the very end. So it's a very, there's like not a lot of story, at least not in the sort of plot wise element. In fact, the art does a lot of, adds like a second layer to the story, which is sort of gets us into Max's own head. So we see things as he sees it. So we sort of start with some very simple, not very defined, sort of like very light blues vision, sort of very mundane, very uninteresting. And then when she shows up, when Julia shows up, things get a little bit more defined, so a little more interesting, a little more complicated, I guess. Just seeing the pages and pages of how the art sort of gets much more defined. Same goes, with his dad, where we get sort of like when he's working on his comic. Of course, we get his sort of work much more, with a lot of details and stuff. But his figure and the art itself sort of seems very undefined, and we met his dad, his problems, and we get a much more, again, defined, much more, little more detailed, still with this sort of bluish grayish colors. Then again, Julia shows up, and again we get much more detail, to the point where it goes from this sort of cool bluish grayish colors to her getting much more defined in the art, with her being more into the brighter colors and not into this sort of bluey, this cooler undefined look. And again, when he's talking to his friend Apaya, we get splashes of colors. So we are definitely seeing how as things become, so we're seeing his view of the world where it's just so very mundane, so very mon- monochromatic, very monotonous, very, you know, life passes us by and we really don't take a look at the details. But when things get interesting, that's when, you know, we get our attention, or in this case Mac's attention, sort of becomes much more complex, much more, you know, looking at the details. So basically we get to what the script says and how the worldview is interpreted throughout the art in the issue. So that I found it very interesting, seeing how, for the most part, comic book art really is about telling the story, and for the most part, every aspect of the character and the character's worldview, it's all very detailed. We, if we want to get into a character's head, we definitely, you see the first person captions, for example, or thought bubbles in, like in the old days, right? So, but here all of it is done very visually, and so I mean, even as he's listening to her tell him that he's worked for the CIA, we even get, you know, to sort of see how he is paying attention, how his moves as well. He still gets the cooler, undefined, monochromatic look, colors, but things are getting much more interesting, much more defined. So it's, so the story is both told visually, not so much as sequential art, which we do get, but also how David Mack decided to interpret what Bendis was, you know, doing in the script, uh, and saying, you know, I don't know what was in the script, but definitely, you know, seeing how we sort of see things through the lead character's eyes, and how he, the artist, interprets the world. If, I think that would be a very good word to, a term to, to describe this, how the artist interprets the world. And so for him, the world is somewhat mundane, and only when we see him working or things getting interesting, this monotony, this, you know, disappears, and it gets interesting, and we get more detail. Uh, Finally, papercraft number 24. So we finally learned that Mac is not, doesn't have leukemia, but she does have an illness, a sort of cancer as well, that only occurs to time travelers. So KJ and Mac are, you know, finally able to sort of overpower the doctor and try to escape, get away from the hospital, because the doctor was going to uh, rat them out to the organization that does actually have a name, uh, which is which does have a name. Anyways, so yeah, so we learned that she doesn't die of leukemia. It seemed like leukemia. It was interpreted as leukemia, but it's sort of a disease time travelers get, which is interesting how she got that particular type of cancer, it seems. The other is that, yeah, the old lady and the man who got the name grandfather, the this guy, are actually, the people, the cave people, Wari and what's his name? The Jaffo, her, her child, got to the future. So in the it was in 2 arcs ago when got into the whole they traveled back in time to the prehistoric era. This time traveler showed up. So it was through this time traveler woman, the first time traveler apparently, uh, brought them back, brought them back to her time, to the time traveler's time, to the future. Because War was concerned that Jaffa wouldn't really survive the attack from her various fathers, those cavemen that the girls dealt with. So that's how they got into the future. And apparently, she does have the same mark and everything that she had painted on. And in fact, Jaffa was raised by the time traveler. So it seems that various threads are sort of that we felt like they were disconnected before are in this arc are sort of starting to come together. So what seemed like a remote adventure in the past actually has consequences in this issue. So certain things that we were introduced to even earlier sort of come together, or in this arc, uh, in this arc, what there was like a warning. So yeah, so a lot of more revelations coming up in this issue. Still enjoying it, and so as crazy as this series seems, it does have a thread. It does have various points that interconnect. Mysteries are solved and explained, but more stuff is brought. For example, how that when Wari says that Erin had come before, she arrived, last issue. Like, when did that happen? And what version of Erin is it? Is it an older version? Is it so? This whole idea of the time traveling aspect of it, the whole sci-fi thing, gets a little messy. But it's fine. It's a fun series, and can't wait to see where this next issue goes, because we end up with Erin finding a map that would take them back to their time in 1988. So yeah, that's it for this week. So next week I have another 3 books. So that's Action Comics, Supergirl, and Catwoman. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not mistaken with Catwoman. It does seem she's coming out next week, which is weird because some. Yeah. Anyways, sorry. So since it seems I don't have a week off, look for the Golden Age Superman video, episode 2 of Golden Age Superman reviews and commentary during the week, during this coming week, and the next retro reviews probably sometime in the next week. So yeah, that's it. I want to say, by the way, thank you to those people who, a couple of people actually sent me some nice comments on my last retro review video. They liked the stories that about how I got into comics, my secret origin as a comic book reader / collector, and you'll probably find a lot of these retro reviews with similar stories. Give me a second. I'm running out of battery here, so I don't want to redo this video again. So as I was saying, you'll probably find a lot of the retro review videos with similar stories, because I think every comic I pick up, especially the ones that I'm choosing right now, do have some certain significance to me as a reader, because I remember like the day I got them, or what they brought to me into the bigger comic book landscape, if you will. Not just starting with just a couple of books, and those couple of books made me buy try other books, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so there's gonna be a few books that I will be reviewing in the coming weeks that do have a certain significance or a reason why I picked them up. And honestly, when I do these videos, not just a retro review or these very comic book review videos, I actually try to bring a little bit of myself into it. So when I criticize something, it's not out of ill will toward the creative team, writers or the artist, because they have their own ideas, and editorial does have their own ideas. They bring those stuff to the page, and perhaps it's not what I want as a reader, especially because reading these books, I think everyone connects to a character, and sometimes we feel that certain stories maybe is not what we expected as readers, or we feel like the character is being disrespected or something, because of our connection to those comics, to the comics that we grew that we've read, for a long time. Some people who started when they were very young, as kids reading comics, or are connected to characters, not just reading comics, but TV shows or movies where they were introduced to these characters. We connect with them, and we feel we have in our heads we have a version of what the characters, of who the characters are, and maybe that type of stories we'd like to read. Like I did with my preview of Supergirl, issue 21, where I enjoyed the issue for what it was, like I said, but as a reader, I sort of had a different expectation, and it's happened to me. Like, I think I'm reading a comic and I think, oh wow, this is a great idea, but the writer has different ideas, and so they go in a different direction than what I would have wanted based on what I'm reading. So I'm certainly trying to bring my own perspective on all of these things. For example, I want to quickly mention, this ad for the Supergirl movie, from the 1984 movie. That movie, I was a big Superman fan since, I was like 4, 5 years old, younger. But when I saw this movie on video, on VHS video, in around probably 85 or 86, uh, as a kid, this movie, and I know this movie is not a really good movie, uh, but this movie sort of introduced me to Supergirl. So to me, and this is what made me a Supergirl fan. And so when I got into comics, uh, I was been looking for like Supergirl comics. And to me, for a long time, Supergirl was, Superman's cousin. So the modern version, or the post-crisis version, which was the whole protoplasmatic version that John Byrne introduced, and at that time had merged with a human and sort of the whole angel thing, and that complicated origin. It took me a long time to like that version of the character, because to me, this was the version of the character, the Supergirl from the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Bronze Age. So I always wanted to sort of pick up comics with that version of Supergirl, which I've done. And then they reintroduced her back in 2004. And so as I've grown up, and I'm starting my 20s, but throughout the years, I've sort of re-examined some of those things now, and I think, well, not the Linda Danvers, Earth Angel, Peter David version of the character is not so bad. I got, of course, the previous version of that, which was just a protoplasmic character, May, in Matrix, the Matrix Supergirl. Uh, I like her. But for a long time, it was like, I don't really like the Matrix Supergirl. I prefer her to be Superman's cousin from Krypton. When because it's simpler, also, explaining her origin. Anyways, I've extended my time. So thank you for the nice comments. As always, I welcome dialogue, as long as it's respectful. So you can leave all your comments. You can agree, disagree with me. Just keep it, civil. So until next time, keep smiling.